Hey YouTube, this is Cheesefactory, and this is a chess video of me and a random I played online, where I had the black pieces and he had the white pieces, and he started with e4, and e5, knight to f3 attacking this pawn, knight to c6 defending, and then bishop to b5, Roy Lopez or Spanish game. I played a6, he played bishop to a4 instead of taking the knight, which would be exchange variation. And now the normal response is knight to f6, but I chose to kick the bishop even further by playing b5. He played bishop to b3, and now I played knight to f6, attacking this pawn. And he responded with d3 protecting, but that's actually not the best move. It's actually stronger to castle. And then if knight takes pawn, then rook to e1 attacking the knight, and if the knight moves, knight takes pawn, and this is winning for white. Knight cannot take, because if it does, then rook takes back for check, bishop has to block, and this is just losing horribly in all sorts of ways for black, which is why castling is more popular. But he played d3, and I responded with d6, which opens up my light squared bishop, and he castles the now, and I played bishop to e3, or e6 rather, which is a bit of a blunder, because if he takes, then I would have to take, and I would have this weak doubled pawn structure that I could probably fix just by playing d5 or some such, but definitely not preferable. Better move would have been bishop to g4, pinning this knight, and then with h3, bishop to h5, g4, bishop to g6. This is actually okay for black, but not what happened. I played bishop to e6, and he did not actually take. He played c4, which I immediately saw and thought that's fine with me, because if he's pawn takes on b5 and then a takes b5 opens up my rook file. So I saw that and thought that's fine. So I played bishop to e7, which allows me to castle, and potentially I can develop this bishop a bit. What I didn't think about is that if pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, doubled pawn structure is very weak. I do not want that. And the other option is pawn takes pawn, bishop takes, queen takes, pawn takes, queen takes. And this is, again, very bad for black. So, better move would have been queen to d7, protecting this bishop, so that if he takes and I take, he can't force this pawn structure because I would take there. So that would have been better, but in the game I played e7, bishop to e7, but he did not take. In fact, he played knight to c3, which puts some aggression on this pawn in that if he takes here and then I take, he would take back with knight and win the pawn, but nothing very scary. I castled, and then he played knight to d5, and this is a very tricky move. I don't want to take with the bishop, because losing a bishop for a knight is not favorable. Bishop is slightly better in endgame, and if I take with my knight, then he takes with pawn, forking these two pieces. So, rather than taking, I played knight to b4, because I was looking at the d3 square that only his queen was defending and thinking if I can get my knight here, that'll be very strong. He plays from here, knight takes bishop, which isn't that bad for me because that was a very underdeveloped piece. So after queen takes knight, this is looking okay. He plays queen to d2, attacking my knight, and I respond with c5, to which he plays bishop to d1. I really dislike that move. I just don't see a purpose to it, really. It just doesn't make sense unless he wants to start like moving this way to get some aggression on my king, but I don't know, I don't like it. So I just played pawn takes c4, pawn takes c4, bishop takes. I win a pawn, and now I have this attack on his rook. So he has to move his rook, and then comes knight to d3, attacking the rook, and he can't take because the bishop defends. And he responds with b3, attacking the bishop. Knight takes rook, pawn takes bishop, knight takes knight check, and bishop takes knight. And from here, I had a favorable trade in that I swapped one of my minor pieces for one of his rooks. So at this point he has two bishops to my two rooks, and my knight to his bishop. So he has the advantage of still having a bishop pair, but I have a rook pair, which is a much bigger deal. So we just had bishop takes f3, and then I played rook on f-file to d8, lining it up with the white queen, in that if this pawn ever moves out of the way, rook is glaring at that queen. From here he plays g3, opening an escape path for not only his king, but also his bishop, and maybe preparing a pawn advance toward my king. I responded with rook on a to b8, planning on coming down here, being scary. Maybe rook to b4, attacking this pawn, unprotected pawn. He responded with queen to e2, which protects this pawn, so he saw that ahead of time. And I played queen to e6. I was attacking this pawn with this move, but I'm also looking at queen to h3 potential, and trying to attack the white king. From here he plays bishop to g2, planning on putting his bishop on f1, doubling to protect this pawn. And I said, okay, that's fine. I will play rook to b4 regardless, and I will force out bishop to f1, because I don't think he wants to be there. Then after that I played the rook on d to b8, doubling these rooks and planning on maybe rook to b1, rook takes rook. Oops. Say random move. Then rook comes down, rook takes, and I have this rook on this file where he really does not want it. So instead, he responds what was that? Rook a, or rook d to b8. He plays queen to d3. Okay, this makes sense. So if I play this, rook takes rook, rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and that's just all bad. So it completely defends against that. So I respond with queen f6. No, I don't. Is that what I wrote down? No. Played queen d3. No, I was a line ahead. Oops. So I played knight to g4, which is coming down, looking at these two pawns. Maybe if I have another move, I can get my queen to f6, looking down at this pawn. Which I guess is what happens when he plays queen to a3, which is attacking this pawn, and I played queen to f6, attacking this pawn. And if he takes here and I take here, well, I think we can see who's winning that, because if you just want to see queen takes pawn check, forced move, checkmate. So, He definitely doesn't want to do that. So instead, he plays f3, and that's attacking the knight. And I said, okay, I don't really want to move my knight to h6 in the corner and sacrifice this a pawn, so knight takes on h2, which is sacrificing my knight, king takes, and from here I think this king is way out of position. I have the doubled rooks, I have the queen coming. I think I can mate him. And we'll see how that turns out. I responded with queen g6, planning on coming over to h5 check, but he played f4, planning on getting this pawn exchange so that this bishop, I don't know about this bishop, but weakening this and giving his king more area to escape. But I had nothing to do with that. Queen h5 check, bishop to h3, and this is just not good at all for him. I played queen e2 check and bishop to g2, and I could have just forced a draw going back and forth, but no way I want to draw at this point. So after bishop to g2 I played rook takes c4, and this is not what you want to see as white. This rook can now come down to this undefended c2 square compared to the very well defended b2 square. And now the game-losing move, queen takes on a6. This is interesting in that if I move my queen, the rook is under attack, but the way it plays out is queen to h5 check, bishop defends, and then after rook to c2 check, he resigns because he only has two moves. You can either move king here, at which point that would be queen takes h3 check, forced move, check, forced move, checkmate. Or the other option is king to g2, which not really any better because I could play this, or I could play this, and now we have a mate threat on g2, and how's he going to stop that? He can't, because the only way to protect g2 is with queen to f1, which allows for mate there. So he saw that, and after move 31, rook to c2 check, he resigned because of his wasted move, queen takes on a6. He thought he had a lot more time than he did. He needed to defend his king, and he did not get around to that. A better move would have been queen to f3 maybe, because now he's offering to trade queens, and if we trade queens, it's two bishops and a rook against two rooks, where I am up 3 pawns, so I'm still very far ahead and likely to win, but he at least has a piece advantage and could potentially try to make something happen. But not what happened. So don't waste a move, because it doesn't work very well. So that's all. That was that game I played. It was very fun. I enjoyed the knight sacrifice. It's always kind of fun to throw pieces away for position and get a tactical one. So I really enjoyed that game, which is why I chose to show this one. So that's all. And that's it. This is going to be Cheese Factory signing out.